Taylor and I are sitting here talking about how disappointed we are that Laura Trump failed to announce in her recent interview with me here on the talk station that she and her husband are expecting. Oh, she could have made the announcement here on the talk station. I mean, of course. The important stories break here always on the talk station, FM 107 AM 1240, particularly during Viewpoints. All right, we have a packed hour this afternoon in the first hour. Second hour, of course, Tom Arms of lookaheadnews.com and Look Ahead Radio with us. We'll be chatting a lot about Brexit, getting a little background on that and a few other items as well. But first, as always, just remind you can join us by phone, 252 area code 247-7282. That's 247-7282 via email at viewpoints with an S, viewpointsradio at hotmail.com, and via Facebook at Viewpoints on the Talk Station. As always, do want to thank our sponsors for the evening, Advanced Water Systems, the people that bring you Connecticut, folks that are practically reinventing water, and Floyd's 1921 restaurant, and they are open. You will be happy to know Floyd's 1921 restaurant is open. If you want to take advantage of getting well, first of all, remind you, dinners require reservations. So 727-1921 is the phone number because it's Floyd's 1921 restaurant. It's an easy number to remember. Now, while I'm telling you this, the other thing to tell you is that they are preparing for their Easter brunch, Floyd's Easter brunch. We're talking garden salad, gherkin pickles, grandma's deviled eggs, of course, southern potato salad, coleslaw, southern green peas. We've got garlic green beans with applewood smoked bacon, baked sweet potatoes, old-fashioned bacon and macaroni and cheese. Pardon me, old-fashioned baked macaroni and cheese, shrimp and grits with tasso ham gravy, poached salmon with tarragon cream sauce, and southern fried chicken. They're also going to have their carving stations with baked ham with rum raisin sauce, carved leg of lamb with mint jelly, carved roast beef with a port wine peppercorn sauce, and of course their apple cheddar muffins, and I always brag on their muffins, cornbread and lightning rolls and assorted holiday desserts, all for only $26.95 per person plus gratuity. Now, it's half that price for anyone under the age of 12. I do want to advise you, by the way, 5 and under, free. I do want to advise you, after I make this announcement, the reservations will begin to fill up. This is Floyd's Easter Buffet. They're back open. They're operating, by the way, Tuesday through Sunday, 5 p.m. every evening. They've not restarted for lunch yet. They're still getting their feet under them after having been closed almost 7 months. And, of course, they will be having their Sunday brunches starting at 11 o'clock. But their Floyd's Easter Buffet, 11 o'clock, that will be their brunch, will significantly, it fills up quickly. Call now. 727-1921. That's Floyd's 1921 restaurant located at 4th and Bridges Street in beautiful uptown Morehead City. On tap this afternoon, we're going to be joined here shortly by Marc Rotterman, host of Front Row. We're going to talk, get his opinion about some political events over the past week. Tomorrow evening, I will be attending the Carteret County Chamber of Commerce Business Expo, so I will be broadcasting from that location, talking to a lot of the expo participants. So we've moved Mark to today, and then later in the program, we're going to be joined briefly by Tim Pierce. He is a reporter, the energy reporter for the Daily Caller News Foundation, and he did a recent story on corporations that identify as American. Now, you wonder, why would that be the case? Well, you've got a lot of major corporations, Google, Facebook, just to name a few, that one wonders, do they consider themselves American or just an international company? We'll get that information later on the program. But first, let's start with Marc Rotterman, host of Front Row, as seen every Friday evening, 8:30 on WNC-TV's main channel, 9 o'clock on the digital channel. And with that, Mark, good evening to you. Thanks for taking the time.
Great to be back with you, my friend.
Pleasure to have you, and especially on a Wednesday evening. We can we're in the middle of the week, so we can get excited about some of the things. Okay, I've got a few questions for you.
Are we too old to get excited?
No, not with. And by the way, I was just a little distressed. I just discovered that Eric and Laura Trump have announced that they are expecting another child. And I was disappointed that Laura didn't bother to speak, announce it here on the talk station when she talked to me a week or so back. I've got to talk to her about that. But anyhow, let's talk about events in Washington, D.C., I want to start off with the grilling of Munchin by Maxine Waters and the grilling of the Attorney General William Barr by the House committee. I'm thinking that the angst and anger of our elected officials in Washington, D.C. is at the point of tipping. I think
it's way past tipping. There's no courtesy left. You don't treat the Treasury Secretary that way, Mnuchin. I'm surprised he didn't just get up and leave.
Right.
But, when she was talking to, I think this is rather fascinating, she's talking to all these CEOs of the banks, and she says to them, are you still doing college loans? No, we stopped in 2007 when the government took over. To a man, they said that, but she did not realize that.
Really?
I mean, she's the head of financial services.
Yeah.
I mean, what she wants to do is make the banks the enemies.
Okay.
Bank is the enemy of the people. I mean, that's where their agenda is. In Barr, frankly, Nadler and that whole crowd on the Judiciary Committee didn't lay a glove on him. And what came out of that, which I thought was fascinating, is he is going to investigate how the whole deal came up to investigate Trump, and he was being spied on. He said, yes, he was being spied on. I don't know if it's legitimate or not, and I'm paraphrasing, but we need to look into it. I think that's a bombshell because I actually think they were listening to him. I think people at DOJ knew that. I think people high up in the Obama administration knew that, including the former AG Loretta Lynch. And I think the worm has kind of turned because the Mueller Report is a dead issue, in my view, with the American people.
The other aspect of this, and I'm wondering, and I know that everybody sees this as really political gotcha, Democrat versus Republican, but the real concern that I think the civil service, the bureaucrats, the professionals in Washington, D.C., let alone the elected officials should be concerned about, Mark, is the absence of trust. We're losing trust in our government. I don't care whether you're a Democrat, Republican. I mean, it's very disconcerting when you have potential charges of eavesdropping and surveillance, unauthorized surveillance.
I think it's clear he was. Trump's campaign was spied on. I don't think there's a question about that. It's how they got the FISA warrant and why. Was it legitimate? Who authorized it? And what was the predicate to do that? And I think that's a real question right now, Lockwood, that needs to be looked into. And frankly, if you remember, Trump said, I'm being spied on. Being spied on.
Right.
And I think he was right all along. He said, I'm being wiretapped to be me. Obviously, they don't have to wiretap you anymore. That's kind of a 50th thing, but it's a phrase. And I think that Loretta Lynch and possibly as far as Obama knew this, and if they did, that's a great abuse of power. And by the way, you don't hear any of the former Obama administration people pushing back on this. I think that's significant.
That is very significant. All right, we're going to continue the conversation here in just a moment. I'm going to leave it with that one because that is an important comment on your part, Mark. Marc Rotterman, host of Front Row, is seen on WNC-TV's channel every 8:30 on the main channel, every Friday evening, 9 o'clock on the digital channel, and again, Saturday at 4:30 p.m., Sunday at 9:30 a.m., all on the digital channel, WNC-TV's digital channel, and then again, noon on Sunday on WNC-TV's main channel. That's Front Row with Marc Rotterman. We're talking about a speedy, precise, concise conversation every Friday, Saturday, and Sunday on WNC-TV with host Marc Rotterman of Front Row. Stay with us here on Viewpoints. Viewpoints on the talk station FM 107 AM 1240. No, it's not Thursday, but yes, it is the voice that you hear every Thursday, Marc Rotterman, host of Front Row. As I mentioned a few moments ago, you can watch him as well as listen to him this coming Friday. And this being Wednesday, I don't know if he's had time to put all of his program together, but I'm sure it'll be interesting come Friday evening, 8:30 on WNC-TV's main channel, 9 o'clock on the digital channel. And Mark, I want to talk to you for a moment about the challenges of the 3rd and 9th congressional districts with all the difficulties associated with the Republican Party. I've been seeing stories here recently, efforts on the part of various campaigners to associate Lieutenant Governor with the debacle associated, well, pardon me, I shouldn't say debacle, the charges associated with Mr. Lindbergh, and of course the difficulties with the administration with the GOP
the chairman of the GOP, Robin Hayes.
So all that being said, is that something that will motivate Democrats?
No, I'm really hearing good things about Dan Bishop, the state senator. I think he'll do very well down there. He's got some money. He's got personal money. I understand that McCready, the Democrat, is not a good campaigner. However,
he's got a lot of money.
He does have $1.4 million on hand.
Yes.
And so you don't have to campaign to have ads make a difference for you.
But here's the difficulty, Mark, and let's talk about this in relationship to PACs and all these other efforts associated with raising money. This is such an odd season. For example, in the 3rd Congressional District, we're just now beginning to think recovery from Hurricane Florence. The 9th, certain regions of that district, likewise, just now thinking about recovery, let alone from Matthew 2 years ago, Michael this past year, and parts of Florence. That, the international scene, the national scene, I just don't see how the candidates are going to be able to motivate and mobilize voters. Your thoughts?
Well, one of the things that Dan Bishop has is, of course, he's a state senator for a majority of that district, so that helps, and he does have name ID. And I agree with you; it's going to be a hard get to get people motivated, and it does, to a large degree, come down to name ID when people go in there, because people are not paying attention during the summer. I totally agree with that. There's nobody on the presidential ballot, and so or the gubernatorial ballot. Let me just say one thing. What I'm hearing is that there's been a lot of focus on former GOP Chairman Hayes,
right?
Of course, on Mr. Lindbergh and some of his associates, employees. I'm not so sure that Wayne Goodwin, the former commissioner, is out of the woods either.
No,
and I'm not making any allegations. I don't think he's out of the woods, and I would expect though that there's other in the coming weeks you'll see more indictments. I will say that, and I'm not saying he's going to be indicted,
right?
But and candidly, when you have people get $150,000 in their PAC, like Walker, it's not a good sign either.
That is another issue. I mean, this thing is such a broad and heavy blanket. We're talking with Marc Rotterman, of course, host of Front Row, and I know that some of these topics will be discussed in the weeks ahead, if not this week as well. I just wanted to get a quick analysis of the state races in light of all the challenges we're seeing. Back to the national races, and I've got to bring up a comment. As a matter of fact, it was made earlier this morning in an interview I do with someone from London, and people have made note of this. And this is Ilhan Omar's comments about Stephen Miller, the president's assistant, who has, of course, expressed a great deal of interest in hardening the borders. And we got to talk about this in a moment. And her comment that she described him as a white nationalist, and I'm hearing a response from a lot of folks that this was basically focused as a means of if you will, bringing up his Jewish roots. I'm a little stunned by this, and
I'm stunned by it too. But what more importantly to me is I'd like to know how a woman like that has ties to CARE and Hamas. He's on the Foreign Relations Committee. I mean, that had never happened under John Kennedy, Ronald Reagan, George W. Bush, George Herbert Walker Bush, and any of the successive speakers. They just wouldn't have put up with it. I'm sure even Paul Ryan or John Boehner wouldn't have put up with it. And frankly, years ago, I don't think Nancy Pelosi would have put up with it. But the deal's changed within the Democratic Party. It's how far left you can go. I really abhor the tag of calling everybody a racist. I think that one of the reasons why people like our show is because it's civil discussion, and that's why they like your show.
Well,
but to throw out, I think, frankly, if you, it's not a very good argument to throw out those kind of tags on people. Call them a white nationalist, this, that.
I know, it's just, the whole thing is...
it's very lazy. I mean, it's not really an argument.
Oh, that's true.
And by the way, it loses its value because they do it all the time.
Good point. And I also, well, we've gotten, if you will, we've gotten somewhat enamored by it. I mean, that's not the right word. We got a little callous about that. We no longer feel the
no,
sting.
That's right. Yeah. I mean, really, we've just been hit with this so many times that people just bounces off.
Well, all right. We've got a caller standing by. Mark, I want to get back to this in a moment, but let me start with caller Ernie from Emerald Isle. Ernie, good afternoon to you. Thanks for joining us.
My question is, my comment is, this person is a racist.
You mean Ilhan Omar? Yeah. Okay.
Yes,
all right.
Yes, Representative Omar. And the second question is, why should she not be censured?
They tried to do that, but then they had to do some watered-down censor, right?
Right, they did. And they just said hate speech in general is not acceptable. And they totally, they just made it so broad.
I think two things you ought to be aware of, Ernie. One is I expect that Omar is going to get a primary. There's a lot of donors and voters up there are tired of this behavior. Mm-hmm. And the other one, I think, is Ocasio-Cortez is going to get a primary. She's threatened several... Nadler himself, who's the head of the Judiciary Committee, and Carolyn Mahoney with finding a primary opponent to them.
Really?
Now, for every action, there's a reaction in politics. And I would suspect that they're going to run the gentleman that was in there before, and this time there'll be a bigger turnout, and I don't think she's going to win. I think AOC is one and done.
Ernie, before I go to another comment, that's a very interesting call on your part. Yes, sir.
Yeah, well, that's probably true. Mark's probably right about that. But, just think back. Bill Clinton got impeached, and it meant nothing. He went about his merry way, and the general public still loved the guy. So I guess it's just gotten worse.
All right. There's an interesting issue associated with this. I'm going to get to this in a moment related to the congressional caucus. Ernie, thanks for the call. Appreciate that very much.
Great talking to you, Ernie.
That's an interesting observation you just made on this related to primary. I know, though, and there was a story I read last week, and I've been meaning to bring it up to you, Mark. I think it's the Democrat Congressional Caucus that has, of course, announced that they will not support any candidate who's running against a seated congressional representative. In other words, the Democrat.
They've already slapped AOC down.
Right. So they're saying that the next time that there's an incumbent and a youngster, such as AOC or Rashida Tlaib or Ilhan Omar, pops up, that they have told the campaign consultants that should they support an outsider's efforts to unseat a current member of Congress, they will not do business with, no one will do business with that congressional consultant. I mean, that campaign consultant. That brings this whole up.
It does, but I will tell you that there's forces inside New York that particularly a lot of big dollar donors and frankly blue collar people that resent AOC.
Right.
And they will primary. One is because she was primarily responsible for Amazon saying we're out of here.
Right. But my point is that basically the DCC has finally said enough of seeing people like Rashida Tlaib and AOC and Ilhan Omar and who come in and create more hate and discontent, even within their own caucus, let alone within Congress in general. I want to talk to you for a few more minutes, if you will, Mark. Marc Rotterman, again, host of Front Row with us this afternoon. The topic is this continued lean, or shall we say rush, to the far left. I mean, we now have Bernie Sanders really promoting single-payer, government-controlled and government-funded health care. We're seeing this with the issue of AOC continuing her efforts. And I'm wondering, with the young candidates, Buttigieg, I'll get that name yet at some point, and O'Rourke, that maybe we're seeing an edge of the Democrat Party that is going to chase voters away?
I think it's going to chase moderates and independents away.
You know, this is telling me that they won't even show up at the polls.
Oh, I don't know if the economy is good, but Trump's numbers, according to Rasmussen, of course, you know, there's not the real clear politics average, but he's at 53% in one poll right now. I think it's going up. And as you well know, usually these national elections come down to the economy.
Okay.
And I think the economy is in pretty daggone good shape right now.
Well, it's moving along, and in the process, we're also seeing a comparative analysis to what's happening in Europe and other countries, that we are definitely leading the edge. All right, let's look at this in relationship to the potential of a Republican primary with the president. Is there a chance that the Republicans are they coming?
I don't think they're 85 to 90% of the base, Republican base, which I call the Trump party now, supports the president. First of all, the RNC, the Republican National Committee, won't support a primary, nor will they just sponsor any debates. I mean, let's remember, you hear John Casey, the former governor of Ohio, popping off all the time. He couldn't even carry his own state when he ran for president.
Well,
so think about that. And I think Romney's day is done. I just don't see it. I mean, you think about all these guys. Like the gentleman that was Jeff Flake was out in Arizona.
Right.
When was the last time you heard about him? I mean, they're gone. I just don't think. I think the party's behind the president. They support what he's doing. His ally Benjamin Netanyahu won overwhelmingly. It was close, but he picked up actually 4 more seats in the Knesset. He's in there for unprecedented 5th term, longest serving prime minister prior to that was Ben Gurion. Now he is the longest serving. Look at what Trump's done for Israel. Now sanctioned the Golan Heights
and recognizing
the embassy in Jerusalem.
Yep, right.
I mean, there's a lot of things that are going on. And as Trump said, he's got bigger things to do. People think, well, you know, they're all upset about the shake-up at the DHS. I mean, look, Kristen Nielsen was a nice woman, but she was basically for amnesty for illegals. She had the same people she didn't root out that were going down and being immigration judges were Obama holdovers.
Okay. Real quickly, before we wrap it up with you, Marc Rotterman, host of Front Row with us this afternoon. Let's close it out with that conversation about, and I saw the number today, and I've got to go back and reread it. 100,000, flood of illegals into this country, or trying to get into this country. My question to you, Mark, at what point will the entire country stand up and say, we do have a crisis on the border?
Well, I think that most of the people agree with the president on this. Look, you can't have the fentanyl, the heroin, the illegals coming over. You have to know who's coming in, and we just can't support it. It's $130 billion a year to support all the illegals. But what I will say, I think is going to happen. I mean, at some point, he's going to be forced to just tell Mexico, "Look, I'm putting our troops 100 feet, 200 feet." 100 yards into Mexico, and we're turning the people back because you won't. I mean, something's got to happen. We can't sustain this. But widely, Kristen Nielsen, the move by the president was widely accepted within ICE and Homeland Security and actually cheered.
Wow. It was. Okay.
That's what I'm hearing. And I have, I'm not saying I got great sources in there, but I have great sources in there.
Okay, we'll accept that humility from from Marc Rotterman, host of Front Row. Very quickly, Mark, this issue of immigration, do you think it's going to continue to be a major topic for political debate as we get closer to the 2020 election?
Absolutely, and I would suspect that the Supreme Court will ultimately weigh in the president's favor.
Okay,
I am a little concerned about Roberts, but I will say I think there's a huge chance that the president is going to get yet another Supreme Court justice on possibly even before the end of this term.
Whoa!
I really do. I'm not wishing
any ill health for
anybody ill. But you have to understand how old Justice Ginsburg is in frail health.
All right. Marc Rotterman, host of Front Row, as seen every Friday evening, 8:30 on WUNC-TV's main channel, 9 o'clock on the digital channel, Saturday at 4:30, Sunday at 9:30. It's 4:30 p.m. Saturday, 9:30 a.m. on Sunday. All of those on WUNC-TV's digital channel. And then again, noon on Sunday on WUNC-TV's main channel, Front Row. Do not miss it with our guest, your host, every Friday evening on Front Row, Marc Rotterman. Mark, as always, stay with me, and thank you very much for being with us this evening.
Yes, sir.
Viewpoints on the Talk Station, FM 107, AM 1240.